Psalms one
Understand
32,
this.
1 through 14, 17 through 18. I spent a 6-month sabbatical in Jerusalem about a decade ago. I lived at an archaeological institute in East Jerusalem, just a stone's throw from the Herod Gate. During religious festivals, Jerusalem would swell in population. Some of these travelers from far away saved their money for years so they could come to Jerusalem during one of the major festivals. Christian pilgrims wouldn't think of missing Jerusalem in their travels to the Holy Land. The city would crowd with buses full of pilgrims, and I met people from all over the world. In biblical times as well, the temple in Jerusalem was a focal point for Israelites from all over Israel and the Mediterranean world. People who lived in the Holy Land would join pilgrims who had traveled from distant lands. Jerusalem's population would swell. As they approached the temple, pilgrims would sing the songs of ascent, celebrating their holy city and their holy God. That starts our lesson for session 5, God's promise. God faithfully fulfilled his promise to send a Messiah to the Lord's anointed deliverer. Psalms 132, 1 through 14, 17 through 18. Their entire Bible is one grand narrative. It begins with creation. Next, it recounts the fall when sin entered the human race through Adam and Eve. This is followed by the covenant God made with Abraham, promising he would use Abraham and his descendants to bless the nations, anticipating the coming of the Messiah. Later, God made a covenant with David, promising the Messiah would be his descendant. Finally, beginning in Matthew, the New Testament indicates Jesus is the long anticipated Messiah. Has anyone ever broke a promise made to you, and how did you react?
I'll put it this way, you don't wanna know.
Everybody's experienced that.
Maybe we'll let that rest, right?
We'll pray over that.
My reactions as a youth were not pretty. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I've had people, and I'm sure I've done it to people too, not
That's
meaning
happened to
to.
everybody.
But it seems like when somebody breaks a promise to me, it's kind of a letdown, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of a depressing, it sends me into a depressing state to think that somebody did that to me. But then again, it makes me realize, well, that's probably how the people felt that I did it to too. So you don't ever want to do that again.
Makes you lose trust.
And I guess the way I reacted to it was, it probably helped make me a more humble person. Because I realized, there is letdowns in this world, and sometimes you just have to face them. But you can't let it stop you from the mission that you're on, and that's the one for Jesus Christ.
There's one thing I've learned, and that is that, and it's kind of one thing I've figured out about myself too as I've gotten older. I cannot stand a person who does not keep their word. If you say you're gonna do something, do it.
My dad was a strong believer in that. He told us, don't tell somebody you're gonna do something and then not do it.
Yeah.
He was a strong believer in that. If you told somebody you was gonna do something, you did it. Anybody else got anything they'd like to share?
I'll say sometimes the one breaking the promise, when you realize you broke a promise, it's where you hurt somebody. It can be just as hard knowing you hurt that person.
Kind of makes you ashamed of yourself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Makes you kind of leery about going around that person again.
And sometimes it makes you be like, okay, need to make up for it.
Yeah.
I've hurt her a couple times.
Depending on what it is, it can follow you your whole life.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And whatever that relationship was with that person.
Yeah.
You can. And you was talking about hurting your mother. I think we've all done that. Somewhere.
It was
along
a
the
while
line.
ago though, so.
I used to remember I wished my mama would just take a belt to me because she'd mouth whoop you to death. She'd let you know what you
Get it
done
over
wrong.
with.
Before she was done, you knew what you was
You
doing.
did you ever beg for a whipping? You say, just whip me. Whip me.
It's kinda like when we was talking in here about the husbands and wives, and you know, and a lot of times, probably the husband's fault more than anybody, you know. But you go to your wife, you apologize, first thing she says, or tell her I'm sorry, she says, you ought to be. First thing they tell you. Okay, I
That ain't
understand.
right, is it?
No, it ain't right.
That's 'cause we don't ever
Hey,
hear that.
Hey, but it's live.
Is Janet trying to get in here? We got one more.
Janet, Janet.
We've got another chair.
Yeah, we got, here.
We got a chair there beside
Yeah, let
me.
me.
Yeah, we're good right here.
Slide around.
Good?
Oh, yeah,
I take this stuff out.
If it's just
we
Janet.
good right here.
Somebody gonna put baby in that?
Yeah, she's got her grandson with her too, I think.
She does.
Oh, okay.
Cause she wanted to know if he could come in here, so,
Look down one more.
till he got used to the church.
It's a good problem to have.
We'll have to figure that out. We'll have to figure that out.
I won't run her off, she just joined the class.
No,
Stayed home and watched a couple
You want me to get up there?
no, I'll get over
Hey, y'all, don't just say.
Sure you want me to get up
it. No, I'm good.
there? You gotta go down.
Yeah, I know.
Are we gonna need another chair?
No, we
Yeah,
got,
not a chair.
if I can use this one right here.
Yeah, you can use that
Yeah.
one. Let me get this out of your way. Yes, I can get in the middle of the floor and just spin this around myself as I'm talking. Well, she'll be
Here we
back.
grow again.
She'll be back, huh?
Here we grow
You
again.
wanna jump down there now?
I think she
We'll
would
be
be
back
back.
with her. Okay, understand the context, Psalms 132. Psalms 132 is one of the 15 songs of ascent in Psalms 120 through 134. The law required that every Israelite male go to Jerusalem for 3 annual feasts: the festival of unleavened bread, the festival of weeks, and the festival of shelters. The Psalms of Ascents apparently were grouped together with these worshipers in mind. As they approached Jerusalem, these pilgrims sang the songs of ascent in anticipation and preparation for these worshipful celebrations. Though Psalms 132 is one of the songs of ascents, it has some characteristics that make it stand out from the rest. First, it is much longer than the other songs of ascents. Its 18 verses make it double the length of the next longest psalm in the collection, Psalms 122. Second, its length suggests that its subject matter was a primary focus for the pilgrims as they made their journey to Jerusalem. Third, Psalms 132 is classified as a royal psalms. Royal psalms are concerned with the earthly king of Israel. They were used to celebrate the king's rule and sometimes included a message from God to the king. In some instances, these psalms were made to intercede on behalf of the king. Furthermore, some royal psalms convey Masonic expectations. Psalms 132 is composed of 2 parts. Verses 1 through 10 contain a prayer that refers to an oath David made to the Lord. It recalls how David brought the Ark of the Covenant in a glorious procession to Jerusalem as he and the people celebrated and worshiped the Lord. 2 Samuel 6:12 through 19, the psalmist requested that the Lord honor David for what he had done. The second half of the psalm, Psalms 132, 11 through 18, recalls the covenant the Lord made with David in Samuel chapter 7. The Lord promised that he would establish David's dynasty with a descendant of David sitting on the throne for eternity. God's covenant with David had profound implications connecting Israel's present situation to both its roots and God's purpose for it in the future as it anticipated the coming of the Messiah. As you read Psalms 132, identify the oath God made to David. Explore the text, God's dwelling place. Psalms 132, 1 through 10. Lord, remember David and all the hardships he endured and how he swore an oath to the Lord, making a vow to the mighty one of Jacob. I will not enter my house or get into my bed. I will not allow my eyes to sleep or my eyelids to slumber until I find a place for the Lord, a dwelling for the mighty one of Jacob. We heard of the ark of Ephrathah. We found it in the fields of Zoar. Let's go to his dwelling place. Let's worship at his footstools. Rise up, Lord, come to your resting place, you and your powerful ark. May your priests be clothed with righteousness, and may your faithful people shout for joy. For the sake of your servant David, do not reject your anointed one. Verses 1 through 5. It is essential to understand what it means for the psalmist to ask the Lord to remember. The rest of the psalm is connected to the idea. Asking the Lord to remember means more than asking him to keep something in mind. Rather, it is asking God to act in light of what the psalmist was asking him to remember. In this instance, he began by asking God to act on behalf of David in light of all the hardships he had endured. The psalmist may have been referring to the affliction David endured at the hand of his enemies and how David remained faithful to the Lord through it all. Or given the immediate context of the Psalms, which gives attention to David's bringing the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem. This may have been a reference to the initial trouble involving Uzzah in the first attempt to do so. See 2 Samuel 6, 1 through 11. It is possible that the hardships here are a reference to the great pains David took and the commitment he made to gather tons of gold and silver along with the other materials for the building of the temple. That's in 1 Chronicles 22:14. Instead of gathering these riches for himself, as most kings in the ancient Near East did, David denied himself the large accumulation of luxuries so that they could be used by his son Solomon to build a temple for the Lord. Any one of these experiences, or even all of these experiences, may have been what the psalmist had in mind as he wrote these words. David wasn't interested in material things at all, was he? Verse 2 contains two lines that are parallel to one another and synonymous in meaning. David swore an oath to the Lord. While the actual wording of this oath is not recorded in 2 Samuel 7 or 1 Chronicles 17, this verse alone, with verses 3 through 5, shed light on these passages by revealing more of what David actually said and did when he zealously communicated to Nathan, the prophet, his desire to build a temple for the Lord. The psalmist indicated that David made a vow to the mighty one of Jacob. At the end of Jacob's life, as he blessed his 12 sons, Genesis 49:24, he recognized that God had been faithful to him from the very beginning when he erected a stone marker indicating the place would be Bethel, meaning the house of God. Both Jacob, the namesake of the nation of Israel, and its anointed king David, made oath concerning God's house. Verses 3 through 4 provided the beginning words of the oath David made to the Lord, indicating his desire to build a house for the Lord. This would be a place for the Ark of the Covenant to reside. These verses particularly focus on David's resolve to do so no matter what it might cost him. They emphasize David's willingness to do whatever he needed to do, including enduring self-denial and degradation to keep his oath to the Lord. David was more concerned about fulfilling this vow to God than he was about his own physical needs. Verse 3 states that David bound himself to this oath. He was more committed to the building of the Lord's house, to enjoying the comfort of his own house and even his bed. He could not be comfortable in his own house while the Lord had no house. What's more, verse 4 indicates David was more concerned about fulfilling this vow to God than he was about his own physical needs. This psalmist stated that David vowed he would not sleep or slumber until he had accomplished what he had vowed to do. David will not allow anything to distract or derail him. Every waking moment, he was thoroughly focused on keeping his oath. After communicating his utmost commitment to keeping his vow, David indicated that he was vowing to do in verse 5, he was determined to find a perfect place to build a temple in Jerusalem, a permanent dwelling for the Lord. This is reminiscent of God's manifest presence at the tabernacle with the Israelites when they wandered into the wilderness for 40 years. That section right there is what put my mind about him being a type of shadow of Christ. Christ didn't sleep or slumber either, did he? He had a mission to do, and he came here to fulfill that mission, no material things involved in it. That's basically what David was doing too. This would be the place where the mighty one of Jacob would manifest his presence with his people. The mighty one of Jacob, who had shown himself faithful to Israel from its beginning, would faithfully continue and provide for and protect his covenant people. Bible skill: use other scripture to understand the context of the Bible passage. Psalms 132:6 reference an event that occurred earlier when the Ark of the Covenant was captured by the Palestinians, then returned to Israel 20 years later. Read about that incident in 1 Samuel chapter 4:1 and chapter 7:1. What are the truths revealed about God in this passage that deepens your understanding of Psalms 132? Let's go to 1 Samuel. Turn our Bibles over there. 1 Samuel 4:1, wasn't it?
Yes.
See what that says.
Mhm. You know, that whole conversation, while you look at that, Buster, about the Ark of the Covenant, you know,
Yep.
Dave, you brought up the Ark several months back about they never found it and everything.
Yeah.
You know, the Ark of the Covenant is a story in itself,
Yep.
where it started, where it
Yeah.
was built, and where
Why
it
it was built.
traveled, who it touched. That Uzzah, he touched it and died.
Yeah.
That's the story about him. But the Ark,
It's an amazing story, isn't
it is. But go ahead.
That's all right. 1 Samuel 4:1 says, "And the word of Samuel came to all Israel. Now Israel went out against the Philistines to battle and pitched beside Ebenezer, and the Palestinians pitched in Aphek." And then we have 7:1, which says, "And the men of Kirjathjearim came and fetched up the ark of the Lord, brought it into the house of Abinadab in the hill, and sanctified Eleazar his son to keep the ark of the Lord."
The Old Testament's tough on you. Ain't it?
Something where it's at.
Yeah, a lot of names.
Yeah.
Michelle stays on me all the time anyway. Okay, verses 6 through 10. The Ark of the Covenant was the gold-covered box or chest made of acacia wood that contained acacia wood that contained a gold jar with manna, Aaron's staff, and the tablets of the covenant. The 10 Commandments, Exodus 7:1 through 9, Hebrew 9 through 4. Once a year, the high priest would enter into the Holy of Holies in the tabernacle and sprinkle the blood of bulls and goats on the top of the mercy seat, the top of the ark, to make atonement for the sins of the people of Israel. This day was called the Day of Atonement. That's in Leviticus 2 through 34, 16, 2 through 34. Also, it was from above the mercy seat that God spoke to Moses, in Numbers 7:89. Therefore, the ark was the symbol of God's presence with his covenant people. Somehow the Israelites lost track of the ark, and it needed to be located. 1 Samuel 4 through 6 records how the Philistines captured it and eventually returned it to Israel. After a tragic encounter where the Lord struck down 70 men at Beth-Shemesh for looking inside the ark, it was taken to jail, which is likely a shortened name for Kirjathjearim. I'm glad they shortened it. 1 Corinthians 13:6, and kept in the house of Abinadab. That's in 1 Samuel 7:1. Ephrathah is the area where David was originally from, and it was there they received word of the ark's location. Verses 7 through 9 record the response of David and the people when they located the ark. Verse 7 records how David exhorted the people to go with him to the Lord's dwelling place to worship. Since God spoke from above the ark to Moses, and God's throne is in heaven, as the ark rested on the earth, it was understood to be the place of God's footstool. Verse 8 moves forward in time to refer to the public celebration as the ark was brought into Jerusalem and placed in the tent David had made for it. The Lord is everywhere and did not need a resting place. However, the ark represented the presence of God with his people, and God had chosen Jerusalem, also called Zion, to be the place where he would manifest his presence to them. Verse 9 recalls how the priest and God's faithful people joined David with loud jubilation, celebrating the ark's presence in Jerusalem. Therefore, based upon all that David had done to demonstrate his devotion to the Lord, the psalmist prayed that the Lord would not reject his covenant with David. Verse 10, this prayer anticipates the central concern of the remainder of the psalm. When and where do you find it easiest to worship God? How do you worship God? Beyond what you do at church on Sundays.
In the morning when I have my coffee,
Mm.
just periods throughout the day, no specific time, it just happens.
I think it's easiest to worship, of course, here at church and at home, at your own home. But, as far as going beyond what you do at church or on Sundays, try to live a holy life and be an advertisement for God.
I think I talk to God more when I'm driving.
Everybody does.
Well, I mean, that's because of the
Praying for patience.
Yeah, get somewhere and don't even
These
know
idiots out here today.
Helen,
where I passed on the
when
way.
I'm driving, I
Dave.
think of
You didn't
everybody
hear
around me
Chris,
is in prayer because I'm coming down the road again.
I mean, you can get somewhere and go, wow,
I did that
don't
this
even
morning.
remember driving there.
I did that this morning coming here. And I asked her. Sometimes I was talking on the phone, and I came up on a bicycle. And I asked her.
This morning.
This
Again.
morning.
I did too.
And I asked her, I said, after I got to the parking lot, I said, did I do all right passing that bicycle? I don't even remember it. I don't remember it at all.
Did
Oh,
you look
that's
on
all.
your reel?
Yeah.
I didn't hit him, I don't think.
But I mean, it seems like
It was
he
her.
answers me more too.
Huh?
I'll be pouring my heart out and sometimes then he'll go, it's not about you. And it'll be like, wow, he really does answer prayer. I heard that one.
Well, the week staying with his mom, and she is just precious, but, she had the book Escaping the Coming Night. Have y'all read that? It's about Revelation, the Lord.
Mm.
Talk about put you on fire for those that are lost. Wow, what is to come for them. But reading this, the promise that he gives us is, my people won't endure that, and I hang on to that promise. But then I look at people I know that are, you try to witness and they just don't get it. The thought of what they're gonna suffer with the tribulation is just heart-wrenching.
I remember
My
reading.
cousins, go ahead, somebody say something.
Yes, sorry. I remember in school when we read In the Hands of an Angry God, I forgot who it was by. It really gives you, perspective on what hell will be like. You're like, I don't want them to go there. I'm not going there.
But think how that grieves God, knowing that he has to send his people through. I mean,
Yeah.
he promises, and it is his promise, and he stands by it. And think how that breaks his heart to know that his people have to do that. So that book was very eye-opening to me, answered a lot of questions.
And I want my family to go, I pray for my grandchildren. I want my family to do it.
Amen.
My cousin that I'm very close to, she's a believer. Her sister married a guy, they got married years ago. They have a wonderful marriage. They have a lot in common. Unfortunately, the one thing they do have in common is he told my cousin this past time we were down there, she told me that he told her that the Bible was nothing but a fairy tale.
Mm.
And I know for a fact that he has influenced my cousin, his wife, to that way of thinking, you know. But they are totally against God, the Bible, everything. And Donna said when he told her that the Bible was nothing but a fairy tale, she said, I lost it. She said, I got up. She said, I didn't tell him bye. I hugged my sister and I left. She said, I just couldn't listen anymore. And you can't talk to him. You can't tell him.
That's my son-in-law. He thinks religion is a cult. And we tried to, it's not a religion, it's a relationship.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
That's when you kinda have to,
Just pray for them.
yeah, and have the knowledge, like when I told you about Genesis history. That's where you can come up with facts to where it sits there and makes them think, well, that is kinda right. There's no way that could happen in a million years. Like,
You don't wanna hear it.
they don't know.
They don't want no part of it.
Yeah, there's people you just have to pray for.
Just pray for him and just live by example, and
What's their name?
his name's Kevin Hartman. I just pray
You
for
know,
him.
sometimes people go through changes, things in their life, events and stuff, maybe in battle or a life-threatening event or something, and something will click in them then. And they always said a lot of soldiers were saved when the fighting started.
Oh, yeah.
There's
You
no
know, Jordan
atheist
does
in
her
the
Bible
Bible.
study with
Yeah.
her Bible group, and she really wants to get Harper involved in church. I said, Jordan, just get up in the mornings, get up Sunday morning, get her in church. Well, I don't. And I said, it's not God's intent to ruin your marriage because you're trying to lead your child to God. But Harper would be sitting out in the backyard, and she'll be looking up, and she'll say, Mimi, we need to talk to you. Let's talk to Jesus. So she knows, and Jordan's worked with her, but she's like in a total panic of, oh my gosh, I hope Kevin don't come out here and see us. You know, Jordan, don't live in fear of that, you know, be a witness.
Well, whatever the situation is with whatever type of person, don't lose your faith.
Right.
Because you never know what their decision is till the last breath.
Right.
And I'm sure there's been, you talking about soldiers, I'm sure there's been a lot of them on the battlefield that maybe cried out in their last breath just to be saved, for God to be with them. We never know.
They even say Jeffrey Dahmer possibly got saved at the end of his
Yeah.
life.
And I can't make any comment about that, cause I don't know, him and God do.
I can.
Huh?
I can. I went through how do I put this, some kind of educational thing. Like I said, I had problems when I was youth, I don't know who doesn't, but, part of it was watching a video of how Dahmer got caught, what he did, you know, the things he did. And at the end of the video, he got saved. It showed him. I mean, he had, by the time right before he was killed, he was saved. He had been reading the Bible. I mean, he had turned his whole life around.
See,
But
people
still
that are
don't-
not saved have a problem with that. They're like, how can they live their whole life like that?
But still, the only people that know about salvation is us and God Himself.
Right.
You know, I can tell you I've been saved. How about y'all don't know really. You know, you can say, well, He testifies to being saved, but God's the one that knows your heart.
Yep.
The thief on the cross beside Jesus.
Yeah. Got saved right there on the cross, didn't He?
You know, one thing too is the different beliefs in the world. Some people have their different types of religions that are totally opposite of how we believe.
Well, that's the thing with my siblings, you know, my sister's Catholic, my brother's an atheist. You can talk to my sister about different religions all day long, she'll listen to you and talk to you about it. My brother, the last time someone tried to talk to him about God, he laid his hands on him. They didn't press charges against him, but they weren't happy about it either. My brother is a very physically abusive person when he's angry, but he gets up from his problem.
I think some of my best times are early in the mornings. A lot of times I wake up before Michelle and Skylar do. And I just go in the living room, sit down, and talk to God while I'm sitting there.
Yeah.
And that
Snoring.
farm that I go to, that's really one of my favorite places. When I'm not running over my phone or my t-shirt. Last week, my phone fell out of my pocket and I ran over it with a lawnmower. Week before that, I was out and one of the pastors by myself thought I'd get some sun, so I took my t-shirt off, riding around, laid it in my lap. Got coming down through there and I seen something blue balled up on the side. I ran over my t-shirt with a bush hog.
Looked like he'd been in a fight.
Hey, that's where he got that damn buster, ain't it?
But it's a place of peace and quiet. And sometimes after I get the pastor's mood and stuff, I like to get me a chair and just sit there and look out over that pastor and look at God's creation, what he's done.
Yeah.
And that's a soothing and peaceful time for me, real peaceful.
You know, Kelly said it good in there one day. We were thinking about getting it right here. He said, if folks that don't believe, if you're right when you die, then you've lost nothing. But if you're wrong,
Yeah.
you've lost everything.
Okay, God's commitment, Psalms 132, 11 through 14. The Lord swore an oath to David, a promise he will not abandon. I will set one of your offspring on your throne, if your sons keep my covenant and my decrees that I will teach them. Their sons will also sit on your throne forever. For the Lord has chosen Zion, he has desired it for his home. This is my resting place forever. I will make my home here because I have desired it. Verses 11 through 12. The first part of Psalms 132 recalled the oath David made to the Lord. Verses 2 through 5. Verses 11 through 18 recall an oath God made to David. Given God's character, the psalmist was sure God would keep the promise. God promised David that he would place one of David's offspring on the throne to rule Israel. This oath is recorded in 2 Samuel 7, 12 through 16. In Samuel 7:16, God told David, your house and kingdom will endure before me forever, and your throne will be established forever. God also included stipulations with this promise. God's promise was sure. However, in order for David's offspring to remain on the throne, they needed to faithfully obey the statutes God gave in his covenant with Israel. The history books in the Bible, from 1 Kings, the Nehemiah, along with several of the prophets, indicate many of the kings disobeyed God's word, and their rule came to terrible end. See Psalms 89. However, the psalmist knew there was still hope. There was still hope because the Lord had chosen Zion to be his home and resting place forever. The psalmist makes clear that the Lord's choosing Zion to be the place of his throne was the Lord's desire. David did not make this decision, the Lord did. Even though God used David, it was the Lord alone who chose him, established it, and accomplished it. How have you experienced God's faithfulness in his word?
I got so many stories, don't we?
Yeah. Don't take long to look around and see some of that, does it?
No, I remember one time we were, Lord have mercy, we were living in the trailer when I was young. And, can I tell the story?
I'm going.
We didn't have, we were a little worse off back then. We didn't have any groceries. So, we woke up in the morning. What was it? There were like groceries on the front porch.
We woke up, we didn't know what we were gonna do, we prayed about it, and then, somebody knocked on the front door, and we opened the front door, and they had backed their car up to our door, and they had a trunk full of groceries and a car full of groceries.
Hey, that's evidence, that's all evidence.
Yeah.
We'll open our eyes, he shows
Yeah.
it to us all the time, doesn't he?
Yeah, look what's happening in the Middle East today.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we talk about people that don't believe different ways and everything, but if you look at what's in the Bible, what the prophets told, it's come true, it's happened, just like they said hundreds of years before it happened. No, there's no
How can you
other
deny it?
story like that. Yeah, and even what's going on today with Israel, I mean, you know, God put our leaders where they are right now for a reason. He put the leaders of Israel where they are for a reason. And ain't nobody gonna mess with Israel too much.
And you see how long it took them to take down all their air defenses over in
12
Iran, don't
days.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it says something in here about the horn of salvation, the horn
Yeah,
of
that's what
strength.
we're coming up on
I
now.
thought about Iran
Yep,
last Saturday.
God broke
The
their
horn,
horn off, didn't he?
knocked down, cause that's Persia. Iran's Persia, yeah.
That gave me chills. Jeez.
The coming Messiah, Psalms 132, 17 through 18. There I will make a horn grow for David. I have prepared a lamp for my anointed one. I will clothe his enemies with shame, but the crown he wears will be glorious. And like David was saying, the horn, that was their strength. Just like a bull without his horns is not a bull, is he? He can't do any damage to anybody, and that's what the bull represents. I mean, the horn. Even though David's descendants failed as kings, there was still hope because God promised David's throne would be established forever. 2 Samuel 7:16. The Lord stated he will make a horn grow for David. Horn is often used in the Bible as a symbol for strength. The impression comes from the animal kingdom. It is used often to refer to powerful kings. Cutting off the horn meant to remove one's power. David called God the horn of my salvation. Psalms 18:2, meaning the Lord was his strength. And Revelations 5:6, the Lamb has 7 horns, a symbol of perfect power. Here the reference points to Christ. The psalmist is saying that a powerful king, the Messiah, would come from David. The first words of Matthew's gospel read, an account of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, Matthew 1:1. The Lord also stated he prepared a lamp. David's line was not extinguished. Instead, it would shine brightly from the Lord's anointed one, the Messiah. This brings to mind Jesus' declaration, I am the light of the world. Anyone who follows me will never walk in the darkness, but will have the light of life. Christ is the eternal Son of God. Verse 18, what the Lord's priests were called to worship him, clothed in righteousness and salvation, verses 9 and 16. The Messiah's enemies would be defeated and clothed in shame. The crown he wears represents the Messiah's power and rule. The word glorious indicates his power and rule would shine and flourish. This description is reminiscent of Gabriel's words to Mary. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. And the Lord God will give him the throne of his father David. He will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and his kingdom will have no end.
Amen.
Why is it significant that all of Jesus' enemies will be defeated?
Because before we were saved, we were enemies of the Lord.
That's right. There's a peace to not fearing your enemies or even death.
The important thing about Jesus and his enemies will be defeated is the importance of Jesus' enemies being defeated lies in the triumph of God over evil, ultimately leading to redemption and eternal life for believers. It signifies the defeat of sin, death, and Satan, demonstrating Jesus' power and authority as the Son of God. This victory provides believers with hope, peace, and the assurance of salvation. Next page, apply the text. Believers should be intentional in their worship. Believers can be encouraged because God is faithful to keep his promises. believers can know that Jesus is the Messiah who delivers us from sin. Anybody got any comments they'd like to make?
I did forget to mention Rayford
As he
Heath for the
did.
ones
Yeah.
that know Rayford and Janice, so I forgot that,
Yeah, Janice passed away just
yeah.
all of a sudden. What was it, Friday?
Sunday,
Saturday
Sunday
morning.
morning.
Was it Sunday morning when she passed?